Here's the story in a reusable document format. CEO replaced single dad with experts, not knowing he was the one who trained them. The conference room fell silent the moment the CEO made his announcement. 23 employees sat around the polished table under the bright daylight pouring through the floor-to-ceiling windows. Some looked surprised. Others looked relieved that it wasn't them. At the far end of the room sat a quiet single father named Garrett Holloway, a man whose work had helped build the company from the ground up. Then came the sentence that changed everything. The CEO announced that Garrett's position would be eliminated immediately and replaced by a team of highly paid industry experts brought in from outside the company. No one noticed the sadness in Garrett's eyes. No one knew the truth. The experts being hired to replace him were people he had personally trained over the years. Before we continue, if you believe kindness, loyalty, and second chances still matter in today's world, please like this video, leave a comment, share it with someone who needs encouragement, and subscribe to Single Dad Empire for more emotional stories that inspire and uplift. The morning sun shined brightly over the city as Garrett walked out of the building carrying a small cardboard box. Inside were family photos, a coffee mug decorated by his daughter, and 20 years of memories. At 44 years old, Garrett had spent nearly half his life helping build Meridian Systems, a technology logistics company that started in a rented warehouse and eventually became one of the fastest-growing firms in the region. He wasn't flashy. He never chased promotions. He wasn't the type of person who demanded attention. Instead, he quietly solved problems nobody else could solve. Whenever systems failed, Garrett fixed them. Whenever projects stalled, Garrett found solutions. Whenever new employees struggled, Garrett stayed late to teach them. The company often celebrated executives, managers, and consultants. Garrett preferred staying in the background. Unfortunately, people who work quietly are often the easiest to overlook. 5 years earlier, Garrett's wife, Celeste, had passed away after a sudden illness. Since then, he had raised their daughter, Marin, completely on his own. Every morning began before sunrise. He prepared breakfast, packed lunches, helped with homework, worked a full day, then returned home to cook dinner and spend time with Marin. Money was always tight, but Garrett never complained. His daughter was worth every sacrifice. Marin often told friends that her father was the strongest person she knew. Garrett never felt strong. He simply kept moving forward because he had no other choice. When a new CEO named Victor Langford took control of Meridian Systems, everything changed. Victor was young, ambitious, and obsessed with appearances. He believed expensive consultants and impressive resumes could solve every problem. To him, Garrett represented the old way of doing things. Victor saw spreadsheets. He saw payroll expenses. He saw a middle-aged employee without a prestigious title. What Victor failed to see was Garrett's knowledge. He failed to see the years of experience hidden behind quiet professionalism. Most importantly, he failed to understand how many people Garrett had personally mentored. Over 2 decades, Garrett had trained dozens of employees. Many had gone on to become managers, specialists, and respected experts throughout the industry. Some worked at competing firms. Others worked for consulting companies. A few had become nationally recognized professionals. Each one carried lessons Garrett had taught them. Yet almost nobody remembered to give him credit. The day after losing his job, Garrett sat at his kitchen table reviewing bills. The bright afternoon sunlight streamed through the window. Across from him sat Marin doing homework. Although Garrett tried to appear calm, worry weighed heavily on him. The mortgage payment was approaching. College savings were limited. Health insurance would soon disappear. For the first time in years, uncertainty filled his mind. Still, he smiled whenever Marin looked up. Parents often carry burdens silently. A week later, Meridian Systems launched a major expansion project that Victor had been promoting for months. The initiative depended heavily on the newly hired experts. The experts arrived with impressive credentials, expensive suits, advanced certifications, industry awards. Victor proudly introduced them to shareholders. Investors applauded. Everything appeared perfect. Until reality arrived. Within weeks, serious problems emerged. Systems failed unexpectedly. Communication broke down. Critical deadlines slipped. Departments stopped coordinating effectively. The experts were talented individuals, but they lacked one thing Garrett possessed. They didn't understand how every moving piece connected together. Garrett had spent 20 years building those connections. He understood relationships, processes, and hidden challenges that never appeared in manuals. Soon, millions of dollars were at risk. Victor grew increasingly frustrated. Meetings became tense. Pressure mounted daily. Then something surprising happened. During one emergency strategy session, one of the consultants reviewed old project records. Again and again, a single name appeared. Garrett Holloway. The consultant recognized it immediately. Years earlier, she had attended one of Garrett's training programs. Another expert recognized the name too. Then another. And another. A realization spread across the room. The people hired to replace Garrett had all learned from him at some point in their careers. Some directly. Others indirectly through training materials he created. One consultant openly admitted that many of the company's best practices originated from Garrett's methods. Another revealed that an industry certification course still used techniques he developed years earlier. The room became uncomfortably quiet. For the first time, Victor began understanding what he had lost. Meanwhile, Garrett focused on rebuilding his life. He accepted temporary consulting projects. The income wasn't stable, but it paid the bills. More importantly, it allowed him to spend additional time with Maren. One sunny Saturday afternoon, they visited a local park. Children laughed beneath clear blue skies. Families gathered for picnics. Maren rode her bicycle along a paved path while Garrett watched from a nearby bench. For a brief moment, life felt peaceful again. That was when his phone rang. The caller was one of Meridian's senior board members. Garrett almost ignored it. Almost. But something told him to answer. The conversation lasted less than 10 minutes. By the end, Garrett stared quietly across the park. Meridian Systems was in serious trouble. The expansion project was collapsing. Major clients were threatening to leave. Investors were demanding answers. The board wanted Garrett to return temporarily and help stabilize operations. Garrett looked at Maren writing beneath the bright afternoon sun. For years he had given everything to the company. And when leadership changed, they discarded him without hesitation. Part of him wanted to refuse. Yet another part remembered the employees still working there. Good people. Hardworking people. Many depended on the company's success. After careful thought, Garrett agreed to meet with the board. The following Monday, he walked back into Meridian headquarters. Employees immediately noticed. Word spread quickly through the building. People smiled. Some even applauded quietly. Others approached simply to shake his hand. Garrett was surprised by the reaction. He had never realized how much people respected him. Inside the executive conference room, Victor looked exhausted. Weeks of pressure had visibly aged him. For the first time since becoming CEO, confidence had been replaced by humility. The board explained the situation. Projects needed rescuing. Departments required coordination. Clients demanded immediate solutions. Garrett listened carefully. Then he presented a recovery plan. Not a complicated one. Not a flashy one. A practical plan built around communication, teamwork, and trust. The same principles he had taught for years. Over the next several months, Garrett worked tirelessly. He collaborated with employees at every level. He listened before speaking. He solved problems without seeking recognition. Gradually, the company stabilized. Deadlines improved. Clients returned. Morale increased. Revenue recovered. The experts Victor had hired became some of Garrett's strongest supporters. They respected his knowledge and leadership. Many openly admitted they were still learning from him. One afternoon, after a successful project launch, Victor stood watching Garrett interact with employees. People naturally gathered around him. Not because of authority. Not because of fear. Because of respect. That realization hit Victor harder than any financial report. Leadership wasn't about titles. It wasn't about prestige. It wasn't about looking important. True leadership was earning trust. And Garrett had earned it over decades. Several weeks later, the board offered Garrett a senior executive position. The salary was significantly higher than before. Benefits were excellent. The opportunity represented everything he had worked toward professionally. But Garrett surprised everyone. Instead of accepting immediately, he requested flexible hours that would allow him to remain actively involved in Marin's life. The board agreed without hesitation. They understood his priorities. When Garrett shared the news with Marin, tears filled her eyes. Not because of the promotion. Not because of the money. But because she had watched her father struggle. She had seen the long nights. The worries. The sacrifices. And now she finally saw him receiving the respect he deserved. Years later, employees would still tell the story. Not about the CEO who replaced a single father with experts. But about the single father who taught the experts everything they knew. His story became a reminder throughout the company that experience matters. Character matters. People matter. And sometimes the most valuable person in the room isn't the loudest voice or the most impressive title. Sometimes it's the quiet individual who spends years helping others succeed. Before we reach the ending, I have a special request. Please comment below with the words, "Respect the builders," if you believe people who quietly help others deserve recognition. And if this story touched your heart, please like this video, share it with family and friends, leave a comment, and subscribe to Single Dad Empire. Your support helps us continue bringing inspiring stories to viewers around the world. As the sun set outside the office windows one evening, Garrett looked across the city skyline and thought about the journey that had brought him there. He had lost a job. Faced uncertainty. Carried fears he never shared. Yet through it all, he remained kind. He remained humble. He remained himself. And in the end, the very people hired to replace him became living proof of his greatest success. Because true greatness is not measured by how many people work for you. It is measured by how many people become successful because of you. And that is a legacy no title, no paycheck, and no corner office could ever replace.